Okay, let's begin. Welcome everyone on the call to CESA's Young Professionals 67 Minutes of Engineering Mentorship for Young Engineers, both environment specialists and graduates. Today, our program is really exciting. We have three amazing speakers, and I am having the pleasure of facilitating this event for you today. I am Sayuri Naika. Sayuri Ramnarayan. I am the 2022 winner of the Young Engineer Award by CESA. And today I will be facilitating the session. I'm an electrical engineer at Biggin Group, a registered professional engineer and a professional project manager. Our event today is really about personal development and personal mastery. And we have three speakers, John Peters, Confidence, and engineer Dr. Gift Pepple, who is going to be sharing their journeys and their life story and advice with us today. So the agenda is on the screen, and it's, as you can see, the tally is 67 minutes. This is our 67 minutes to South Africans. We start off with the personal development and career planning by Mr. Johan Peters. And thereafter, if there's any questions, we will facilitate it. Moving on to Confidence story, which is engineering my life, where she will share journey with you and pass on some experiences and just some advice. And then moving on to Dr. Gift, who will speak about engineering careers. I think we have a lot to learn from him there. He's an engineer now working in the medical space. Thereafter, there's going to be a Q&A. So please, if you have any questions, put it in the chat box as it comes up. Let's keep it interactive. Also, you can use the chat function to talk to other young engineers on the call. Use it as an opportunity to network. I think let's start by putting in our names. What do we do? Where do we work? Which country are we from? And let's just start networking and building a panel of young engineers. So to start, let's remember why we're here today. And that is really in the honor of Nelson Mandela. So it was quite a privilege for us South Africans to gather on this day and give 67 minutes to either personal development or 67 minutes, as the speakers are doing, to improve the lives of others. And that's just in memory of the 67 years of commitment that Nelson Mandela had given to benefiting all the lives of South African citizens. And just speaking of myself, personally, if I have to reflect on my own career, a lot of what I achieved would have not been possible if it was not for the amount of effort that he had put into making the country what it is today. So it's really just to honor him and to give back as much as we can. So just to start with a quote, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. And I think we've seen this in him. The impact that he has is never ending and always going to be impacting South Africa going forward. So as young engineers, if I can just start by giving you some advice, it's really about using your time, and whether it's a 67 minutes today or every second minute of the day, time is one thing that we're all born with in equal amounts. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't have any reservations. We all have 24 hours in a day. So let's use that to the best of our ability, whether it's to develop ourselves personally, whether it's to help out someone else in need, etc. And yes, let's use this time now while we're on this call to try and learn as much as we can. As I've mentioned, if you have any questions, let's facilitate that and get the answers that you need. So starting with our first speaker, I think you've got enough from me. We're moving on to Mr. Johan Peters. He has a BSc Honours in Electrical Engineering. He is a certified energy manager, energy auditor, a PR Eng, and a director of Energy Infinity, and also he is a mentorship coach. He excels in power and engineering, is a specialist. He also guides young professionals, assisting them to realize their full potential. So at the beginning of this call, I mentioned that I was Young Engineer of the Year in 2022, and Johan did already say, but it's 100% true, that he had played a really big role in molding me into the person that I am today. So I have learned so much from him, and it really gives me a great pleasure today to be able to share the session where he is going to obviously have the same impact on the young engineers in this call. So really take some time to ask him questions. He's a great mentor, and I'm sure you can also reach out to him afterwards. So through his role as a power and energy specialist and a coach and mentor, he embodies a well-rounded professional who not only excels in his own work, but also contributes to the growth and development of the next generation of professionals in this field. Okay, moving on to Johan. You can share your screen.
Thank you, Sai. I appreciate. Just quickly do this. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sai, and also for the management team of CESA who put this together. I think it's a very good idea. And I also believe that we need to extend the 60 minutes of doing something for other engineers and for each other more often, most probably than once a year. So, to start off with a presentation in terms of personal development and career planning, which is quite a vast topic, which I can obviously talk about for hours, and trying to fit that into a 15 to 20 minutes time slot is very challenging. But let me see how quickly I can go through a few pointers that I believe everybody needs to understand to really grow your career. And I've themed my presentation today an introduction to your autopilot. And I hope that the suspense will run for a few minutes in terms of what do I mean by an introduction to your autopilot. There are obviously a few words in that sentence that you need to understand. It is your autopilot, and autopilot is a thing that normally they use in aeroplanes that can fly the aeroplane by itself by preset it to some certain settings in terms of where you want to go, what you want to achieve. And I want to introduce that concept of autopilot and introduce you to your autopilot that you do have access to, and you might not know it at this stage, that you do have access to your own autopilot. So since it is the 67 minutes of engineering mentorship in honor of Mr. Nelson Mandela, I thought, let me start off with a quote by the great man. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And I pondered onto this quotation from him for a few days just to understand, but what does it mean? And obviously the highlight word in this sentence is education. Now, when we talk education, you might think, it's officials go and study an engineering degree or some diploma or certificate, or in something technical might come to mind. But we must also understand that it starts with an education of your mind. What do you think of? What do you think about? And how do you educate your behaviors, and how do you educate your thinking? I think that's important to also realize as part of that quotient, that it is more than just technical education, since I believe that most of us are engineers in the audience today. So what will you learn today? And the key takeaway points from today is always be willing and able to learn. Don't think that you know everything. I'll go through a slide showing you the stages we go through in terms of learning. I think it's important to always learn. Know that you don't know. That's also the first stage when we start learning something new, is to really know that you don't know. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, I say that if necessary, but I do believe on certain topics, it will always be necessary to ask for help. We don't know everything at once. And there's always a solution. And by saying that, don't just think of technical solutions. Also think, again, my topic is more related to the mind and your thinking and your belief system today, than technical. So just park maybe the technical thinking for a moment and think about the mind and your belief system. And on the picture to the right, we see work-life balance, that most of the people, preach and say you must balance your work and your life. For me, it's difficult, and I do believe that we need to replace balance with integration. We need to integrate our work, our life, our family, everything, into the 24 hours that we have per day. If you balance it, it means in my mind, and my definition is that the one equals the other one. And that's not always possible, because if you have a deadline, for instance, to achieve in your work, you might work more than 8 hours that day to achieve that deliverable and to enable you to go somewhere and get something in your business. So think more about integration. How do I integrate? Your work, your life, and everything that needs to happen in a 24-hour period, or in a year at least? So if you look at what the School of Life has taught me, is change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. Now that I'm sure that you haven't did this for the first time in your life. You most probably heard this before, but that's easier said than done. But how do you do that? Or how do I equip myself to enable me to do that? So let's maybe just a story about myself and why I've created this presentation. That's my family. I'm married to Michelle, lovely wife, 4 boys, getting all of them out of school already. So, I've experienced, and if they ask you, what is your experience? My experience is, well, going for 53 years now doing life. So, and I want to get to the last point in this slide is, I do not have everything figured out. I'm just as human as you are. So normally when people see a life coach or talk to somebody, you think that they know everything and that I've got everything sorted out and my life is just sunshine and roses and I've got no challenges because, I've made it. And the true story is you will never arrive. You will at least make the road that you travel easier for yourself and get your destination, more efficiently. But, it's important to understand that it's a journey. Life is not something that happens overnight. And equipping yourself with the ability and the belief system and the know-how in terms of how to do life, that is everyday exercise. Keep on keeping on. That's very important to realize. So just in terms of life coaching and NLP, we need to understand, what is life coaching? And maybe I should first start to say what a life coach is not. It's not a genie that appears in your life, and out of a magical lamp, and all of a sudden all your problems are gone and you are set for life. It's not someone who listens to all your woes and give you a golden response that will dissolve all your fears and bestow on you all your wishes in an instant. Life coach is a person that will assist you in developing yourself. And the important thing to realize here is you must develop yourself. A typical life coach can only assist you into the person and becoming the person that you believe you can be. I can believe in somebody that can do something, but nothing will happen unless that person, believes for himself or herself that it is achievable and I can do it. So doing the same things you believe in that makes you happy and getting results which you have preset and are delighted with. And I think it's important maybe for me just to say that again. It's doing the things you believe in that makes you happy and getting results which you have preset and are delighted with. Now that is a mouthful. If you look at beliefs, if you look at preset, the question is, how do you do it? And obviously somebody or a life coach can assist you in getting to that point where you really do what you believe in. So a life coach is typically somebody that can assist you getting from point A to point B. So it's important for you to know where point A is and where point B is. If you don't know, then you don't know where to start, you don't know where to go to. So life coaching is a journey of discovery, and it's really a journey, and I keep on discovering myself in life every day. You cannot make someone to go where they don't want to go. So it's a decision that you need to make, and you need to understand you are accountable for your own destiny, and you need to do it. So what is NLP? So NLP is a study of subjective experience, and subjective in this sentence means it's based on or influenced by personal feelings, tastes, or opinions. And the important word there is personal. What do you feel? What do you taste? What are your opinions? So neuro is the nerve system, the mind, and the sensory organs with which we receive and filter information through your 5 senses. Linguistic is the language that you use. And program is obviously like a computer program. How do you program yourself? If you look at linguistic, you can obviously, it's about language, sounds, feelings, basically your senses that will program you. So what do we do with the NLP programming? It's a study of how we think and communicate with ourselves and with others. And the important part in that sentence again is the communication with yourself. And we will go a bit into more depth in later slides. But basically, NLP is a study of how we think and communicate with ourselves and with others, and how we can use this to get the results we want. And again, results that you want, not the results that your mother wants you to achieve, or your father, or your husband, or somebody else. What do you want? So the heart of NLP is modeling successful behavior. Now, how do you model successful behavior if you don't know what successful behavior is? So it's important for you to realize, again, what do you want to achieve? Where are you going to? What's your end destination? If you decide to go on holiday and you pack your car, are you driving to Cape Town or Durban or another destination? You need to know where you're going to. And then obviously you need to get the ability and the resources to get there. So one thing that's important to also take notice of is what I call maps of the world, or the maps of perception. And the maps of perception is, how do you perceive the world? What is the world to you? And the world is everything that you see, that you hear, that you feel, that you smell. And the message is that your map, that whatever you see, is not the real world. It's not a territory. It's only your perception of what you believe the world is all about, and what you believe is right or wrong. And that gets programmed as part of your NLP, or your neuro-linguistic programming, where you talk to somebody or you talk to yourself, and and also your education and your culture, where you grow up, and whatever has a massive impact on how you see the world. And then you get bombarded by millions and millions of bits of data every day. And you cannot attend or act to all the bits that you receive. And it's been shown that you can only act on, if you are well rested on a good day, we talk about the 7 ± 2. You can at any time act on ±7 ± 2 bits of data. So it's between 5 or 9 of the millions of data that you receive every day that you can really act on. And what do you, so we do not operate on or in the real world outside of ourselves, but on our interpretation of it. So you interpret what every bit of data that you get. Things happen and you attribute meaning to those things. Nothing has any meaning in it and of itself other than the meaning given to it by people. So what you believe the world is, and what you see, is the meaning that you or other people gave that particular thing. Things are happening all the time, and we are always asking, what does this mean, and how must I respond? That is why I talk about the mental map and the territory. And again, your territory is just a perception of the world. We all have our own maps, and we all see the same thing, or receive the same bit of data, but we all think differently on certain things. And we never, or seldom, that we're on deciding about the same thing and have the same ability to understand the way that we think we understand the world. So what do you do with the bits of data that you get? Your brain does basically three things: deletion, distortion, or generalization. So deletion, or attention, is a limited resource. We just don't notice certain things, especially if you're not interested in them. So things that you're not interested in, you will not think about. That bit of data will come to you, but you won't even realize that you saw it. It will make no sense to you. So in every situation, there's more going on than you realize. Most of the information we delete may be irrelevant, but sometimes we overlook things that may help us if we notice them. So it's important for us to understand that your brain will delete some information that might be important to you. And if you don't know that, then you will lose out on maybe an opportunity. Distortion is now an attempt to make sense of this world. We will attribute meanings to events based on our existing maps. Psychologists have identified various cognitive biases that distort our view from the world. And generalization is when you see something, you will generalize it. So if you go to a new place, for instance, and there's a chair to sit on, and you look at the chair, you will go and sit because you are relating that particular chair to a similar chair that you've seen before, you sat on before, and it didn't break. So you didn't go to the chair and first check, especially the structural engineers go and check the integrity of the chair, make sure that it can carry the weight. You look at the chair and your brain will generalize that to say that you've sat on one before, it's fine, you can sit on it and you will sit and nothing will happen. So that's just the filtering process that we go through. So if you dream it, have the courage to take action and have discipline to stay on the right path, you will make it. So the question is, what are you dreaming about? So I want to introduce you to your what I call your autopilot, or your RAS, or what the clever people call the reticular activating system. So our mind is constantly bombarded by a great deal of information received by our senses, visual, auditory, taste, smell, and touch. Fortunately, we are equipped with a reticular activating system that filters this sensory information. So without your RAS, we would simply be overwhelmed by information overload. So the RAS works by filtering all sensory information we receive and channeling them into your unconscious or conscious mind. So the 7 plus or minus 2 are the 5 to 9 bits that goes into your conscious mind that you can actually act on, and all the other bits goes into your unconscious mind, which you program without even knowing about it. So it's one thing that you need to, or two things actually that you need to understand of your RAS, except that it's your autopilot. It loves you and it wants to prove you right. So if you think of something that you strongly believe in, and you have programmed your RAS by your 5 senses, and you believe that it is nice, and we can take any example, and let's take an apple, for instance. So some people might enjoy the taste of an apple, and some might not. So when you look and you feel and you taste the apple, and it's nice, it tastes nice, and you enjoy it, you will tell somebody else, look, taste this apple, and it's nice. So for the next person, it might be that the same apple is not tasty, which means that who's right and who's wrong, in terms of what you believe. How does your RAS sort information to your conscious mind and unconscious minds? So our beliefs, attitude, values, and conditioning act as filters to our RAS. Everything deemed irrelevant by our filters disappears into our unconscious mind. So I think it's important to realize that you've got access to, in programming yourself. And I don't want to, due to time constraints, go into the details of how it works, but you can go and maybe read up on it. But this is, even if I just stop my whole presentation here and everybody realize that you are in charge of your own RAS, your own reticular activating system, your own autopilot. You can program it in any way that you want it to program it. You can either program it positively to assist you or negatively, obviously, to make life more difficult for yourself. I'm going to skip over the 5 principles of success just due to time constraints. Like I'm saying, I'll make this presentation available anyway. But I think we must understand it's a process, and this actually comes from the Bible, where it says that what's your thoughts, they become words, and what's your words, they become actions. What's your actions, they become habits. What's your habits, they become your character, and what your character becomes your destiny. So it all starts with your thoughts. What are you thinking about? So I think it's important for yourself to write your own testimonial about yourself. What do you believe in? What do you want to achieve? And call yourself to action. Success is a sum of all small efforts repeated day in and day out. So there's a saying that says, and I've adapted or changed a bit to say that just one small positive thought in the morning can change your whole day. And I've just added to say the opposite is also true. One small negative thought can also change your day, and obviously can become more negative. So in summary, I think it's important for us to understand that you are in charge of your own destiny, your own belief system. And most of the things that you believe in is limited beliefs. And you need to, and there are obviously tools, and I can assist you with tools and programs to assist you to change that limiting belief. And remember, your self-talk will come out in your actions, in what you think, what you do. So by saying to yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm always saying, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So it starts by what you think about. What is your thinking about yourself? I think it's important for you to realize that you need to change your thinking to change your future. So thanks for your time. And again, thanks for listening. Please reach out to me. I've got my cell phone number there. I've got my email address there. And I'm more than happy to assist you in gaining the tools that you might need to make your own destiny better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johan. I think whenever I listen to you, I always learn a lot, and this was very informative. Interesting to know that our reticular activating system loves us. Unfortunately, and it wants to prove us right, but that's both a good and bad thing, I feel, from what you're saying, because if I believe something, for instance, I can't achieve this because it's too hard or there's an obstacle in my way, then my mind is going to convince me that I'm right.
Correct.
So I think, you always used to say this, you don't know what you don't know. And now I know that the system of mine works in that way. So I think as young engineers, we focus a lot on the technical development, and this sort of personal work falls behind. We don't focus a lot on our personal development, on thinking about the way we think about things, on reframing our thinking if needed, and so forth. So I think you've really kind of opened up our eyes to where we should be looking if we want to achieve personal development and personal testimony. I think you really did that for me in my start out years when I started working at Big, and that little bit of nuggets that I used to get from you still sticks with me. Keep on keeping on being one of them. So if we can just ask while we have some time to facilitate a question, since our systems work this way and our mind works this way, what would be your bit of advice for the best way to start your day if you want to achieve something on that day?
No, thanks, Sayuri. You hit the nail on the head with your comments, and thanks for that. It's very important when you wake up every day. Now, one thing doesn't work for everybody, or the same thing doesn't always work for everybody. Some people, get up later and some earlier in the morning. And for me, it's important to start your day with any positive thing or thought, or when you hear the alarm clock going off and you think immediately, oh, I must get up, I must go to work, and you are sort of almost getting tired immediately after that thought, it means that you need to change that thought. And you cannot change the thought that morning just after the alarm goes off, because then you need to act on that thought already. So you must go to bed already and say to yourself, what will I do first thing tomorrow morning when my alarm goes off? Am I going to say, wow, it's another new day. I'm happy to go to work. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to make it nice and whatever the case may be. Or, you need to, and again, that's why we call it coaching. You need to coach yourself to do that, and decide when you go to bed already, how are you going to act tomorrow morning when your alarm clock goes off? And then you do what you decided. And then the next thought, again, be happy, go to bar, go take a bath, take a shower, sing, do what you enjoy. I think that's very, very important.
Okay, thanks, Sion. I think that was great advice. I'm going to not snooze my alarm tomorrow morning, and I'm going to spring out of bed. Yay, load shedding. I get to go to traffic and,
Yeah, exactly.
just try and enjoy everything. Yeah, and I get you. Thanks a lot for that. I think if you don't mind staying on the call, there may be some questions for you going forward. Okay, so moving on to our next speaker. Apologies. Okay, can we see my screen? Okay, our next speaker, I'm glad to introduce you to Confidence Chilanti. She is a founder of the Prestio app and a Mail and Guardian top 200 she's a young chief engineer. She is a council member at UJ, and she was also CESA Young Engineer of the Year in 2019. Confidence is an ambitious and dynamic technical engineer and motivational speaker. She's a preacher, she's a mentor. She was born and raised in Limpopo. She has earned a master's degree in geotechnical engineering from UCT and also completed a bachelor's in civil from the University of Joburg. She has a passion for community building, education, innovation, and mentorship, which is probably why she's joined today and is able to share with us. And just to quote her, her mission is to use, my apologies, is to use all her God-given opportunities to change the world into a better one. Confidence, over to you. I think you're on mute.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and also for extending the invitation to be part of this beautiful 2023 Nelson Mandela Day. Actually didn't have much of a presentation prepared, but let me just project what I have on my screen and see if that could just help us engage better. Just confirm when you can see my screen.
Perfect, we can see it. If you don't mind zooming in.
Okay, all right. Let me just put it on presentation mode. Is it visible better? Is it better?
Yes, it's better.
Yeah. All right. Like I said, really appreciative of this afternoon to share just a bit on my journey. My topic was quite simple, I guess, to just speak about my journey as it is. And I believe you've already summarized quite a lot on the bio, but I think what I would like to emphasize or rather highlight is mostly the key lessons learned in the journey and what basically contributed to where I'm at today. And by the way, I'm still learning a lot. The journey is still quite interesting, lots of challenges and lots of interesting discoveries about the engineering journey in itself. But in summary, this is a glimpse of what it looks like in images. And it started there off as a very young girl, not too sure what I wanted to do. But one thing I was sure of was that I just didn't want to do medicine. I think I've always had this eagerness of problem solving. love maths and science, So this is not a high school career guidance, but the reason I'm spotting some of those things is just to show that as early as it is, we already have an idea of what we want to do. And then high school, then university engineering. But somewhere there in that engineering journey at the university, I think I almost gave up. Because it was quite an interesting, challenging journey, But while I realized that we as engineers are meant to solve problems. So I guess conquering the engineering degree is problem solving in its own. And what happened in that moment, I think I was exposed to what we call vacation work, whereby I explored quite different engineering discipline or other civil engineering disciplines. I was exposed to roads, I was exposed to transport, construction work, or rather being a resident engineer. And in that journey, there was one field which was very much curious of, which was geotechnical engineering. It sort of looked very fascinating because to me, growing up, I just didn't understand what that was, and starting to do vacation work and studying that at the same time, I'm like, let me pursue this further, which is why when I started my first year working with Orecon, I went straight to geotech. And while at it, that's when I realized I needed to study and learn further on the concept of geotech engineering. And that's when I enrolled for my master's at UCT. And I must say that while I was learning, I realized the importance of continuous learning and research. Because what happens is that every day in your workday, you would be exposed to challenges. And it's not always when you're going to get challenges or projects which somebody else has done. I mean, I remember in my second year, I was sitting with my manager. He's like, actually, this is the first of its kind project that we're doing here. So you'll need to do research. You'll need to engage with the stakeholders. You'll need to do your holistic research in doing the work. And that's when I realized that the textbook is not as enough. One is to learn other skills such as stakeholder engagement. One is to learn engaging or rather with just research. One is to engage with other discipline. And that in itself helped me understood what it means of problem solving, that it doesn't end with a formula. It doesn't end in just putting that report out there, but rather it constitute different forms of engagement. So that was one of my biggest lessons. And while at it, I realized that that's actually one of X's biggest requirement, that in your problem solving, you need to prove that you have done your different or rather different checks. They call it a checklist, but according to me, that's not necessarily an Excel checklist to make sure you design, but it's to ensure that in your day-to-day engagement as an engineer, you are aware that your safety for the end users is very critical. You need to engage the end users. Your ethics is very important. Your continuous development is very key. So, which is some of the things that I was learning indirectly while also ensuring that I'm meeting my Excel requirement. So in 2019, I got to register as a professional engineer. And one thing I want to highlight was that in that journey in itself, I think my key was to ensuring that I become innovative in problem solving and in also understanding the impact of the work that I do, to say my work does not end in a paper submitted to a client, but rather it's something that is meant to solve problems, something that it is one day is meant to save life. I remember one of the projects being the Nigeria projects. I call it my favorite project. And in that project, so there was what we call the gullies, and the gullies were basically destroying the properties, infrastructure, destroying lives as well. It's basically a whole village would be flooded. And in that project, I realized that it is very key that we take our work seriously, and that we must understand that it's not just running a slope stability assessment on paper, but rather understanding that we are saving lives, that we are doing work that at the end of the day, they need to have an impact on communities. So furthermore, one of the things that I also learned was the fact that I shouldn't be limited by what I see being done on a day-to-day basis. That as an engineer, I need to be innovative in my solution. I need to make sure that I do not just stick to what I believe should be done, but rather explore and be open to doing new, or rather in applying new methods. And that's basically what the engineering journey, or rather in that journey, one thing I learned. But one part of the thing that I also wanted to mention was that in my journey, I had quite a lot of mentors. There'd be external mentors, there'd be internal technical mentors, there'd be internal professional development mentors, you know, and there'd be coaches and sponsors as well. And what I learned in that process was that I cannot really walk the journey on my own. I need to make sure that I've learned as much as I can from those who have gone ahead of me. And at the same time, making sure that as much as I'm learning and getting from my mentors, that I do the same with the ones that are following us. And those are some of the key contributions that ensure that in every decision that I made, in places where I lagged, that I always had enough support structure to encourage me or to strengthen me in any decision making. So besides the engineering part of the journey, in 2019, I became, I was appointed, rather nominated to be part of the UJ Convocation Committee. And while at it, I also got nominated to sit on the University of Johannesburg Council. And it is at that level wherein it was basically more like being a board member. You know, those who graduated at UJ, you'll see that your degrees written that the council and the Senate hereby confer that degree. But behind that being member of council is a whole lot of coordinating, a whole lot of contributing towards the growth of the institution. You know, that opportunity for me was one of those things that helped me learn quite a lot. And people often ask me, how did you become a council member? And I'm like, if I was to answer you how that happened, you would not be able to rather understand how to reverse the actions that led to that day. It was quite a long story that started off by showing up and volunteering on a day when we just needed to accompany our HR people at Oricon there. And they said, oh, we need an engineer to accompany us on a career day. And I show up on that day. And it is through that day wherein one of the leaders at the institution said, but you should come back in the institution, or rather, when an opportunity came by, they phoned me and said, listen, I remember you showing up voluntarily to contribute back, or rather to give back to the undergraduate students. And we feel like you should join the institution in contributing to its growth and all of that. And it is while I was there that I grew my network, and, you know, it opened up a whole lot of other opportunities while serving at the UJ Council. And furthermore to that, grew my network in such a way that even as of today, there's other opportunities that have been opened up by just showing up and volunteering for that one single event. So that in summary, I just learned that there is a power of showing up. You don't need to show up to earn a salary or to be paid. Just by being asked and saying, today I want to show up and give back to the community. You don't understand how that network may open one door that you may know, or rather you will not even be expecting. And while at it, or rather a few years down the line, I realized that there was actually a need. You know, one of the things I'm strongly passionate about is giving back. You know, it's one thing I've always done, even at the university, making sure we go back to high school, you know, do the sessions, the career sessions, assist the high school learners. And while I did identify there was a huge gap in the industry, whereby young girls, and especially in the STEM, that they lacked mentorship, they lacked role models, or rather also lacked that space wherein to network and to engage. And I realized there's a lot of women organizations that are already doing all of that work. And with my business partner, we decided to work on an app called Prestio. And in that app, the idea was just to create a social media space wherein we seek to address challenges faced by women in the society, more especially in engineering, wherein there's those global common issues that our women are exposed to. And Prestio basically became that space, or rather has become that space where it's a safe space to connect and network and allow women to engage with one another, you know. And it is through that app I learned that basically, with all the challenges that we get to see today, we don't need to wait for Mark Zuckerberg overseas. We don't need to be worked in for somebody else in China to come up with a solution. That a solution can actually come amongst ourselves, and we build it to serve in the world. And which is why when I developed that app, we realized, we made sure that it can be translated to all the global languages, and it is available globally, and everybody else and anyone in the world can actually utilize it to empower and to engage, or rather to help resolve whatever they are dealing with in that sphere, you know. So that is one of the things that was very key in my career journey, you know. And beyond that, I think you've already mentioned there was some few recognition along the way. There's the CESA Young Engineer of the Year, which was one of those spaces where I learned to realize that actually young people are doing a lot, you know. I mean, our facilitator today is one of those achievers, and we continue to learn from a generation of young engineers that have gone before us. And along the journey, became also was listed actually last year as one of Million Guardian's top young South African. I was also listed as the Inspiring 50 top 50 women in South Africa. And beyond that, I think more than anything, my journey, the key has always been to say, on a day-to-day basis, what is it that I need to do as a young engineer to show up and give back to the community, to show up and serve, whether it's on a day-to-day basis in my workspace, or it is in a community, or it is in the education institution, you know. And one of the very big events that happened to me was that in 2020, I was appointed by the cabinet to serve on the Social Housing Regulatory Authority. And for me, it was one of those opportunities where I realized that if I'm sitting and complaining about housing, I need to ask myself, what am I doing to make sure that the housing sector in South Africa is supposed to serve the end users as it is. And I think in that time, I've managed to learn and contribute quite a bit in ensuring that there are key rather principles of engineering that we contribute in that sector. And it was quite a meaningful journey in itself, where, you know, I was able to serve like that. But then in summary, I think I just want to go down to say that I've learned the power of showing up, that wherever you are, just show up and serve fully. And number two is that engineers are designed to solve problems. There is a reason why we chose engineering, is our eagerness to see change in our society, in the world that we live in, the infrastructure, you know, and that we're not limited to the textbook. Some of my challenges that I always bring up to the table is that with our textbook, what are we doing to make sure that we are continuously contributing to the improvement of the principles? I mean, in our last session, I was invited to speak at one of the recent sessions. We're talking about climate change, and I'm saying the floods that are happening in KZN and all this destruction of infrastructure. Is it not supposed to be a wake-up call to say, let's go back and revise and relook at how we're doing our design? Let's go back and relook at how we are showing up in solving our clients' problems. When we say we are building a bridge, are we building it just because the textbook formula said so? Or are we going above and beyond, looking into the future climate problems that we are already foreseeing, or rather we are faced with at the moment? So those are some of the things that as an engineer I've learned to say, I should not be restricted to the black and white textbook in front of me. And some of the things, third thing is to say, well, work hard and smart, you know, in the process, and ensure that you improve your communication skills. Some of the things that we criticized with as engineers is that apparently we don't know how to communicate well. And I've realized that we cannot show up and solve problems if we cannot learn to communicate. There are different ways of communicating, and all of that, we need to make sure that we continuously improve. Teamwork and integrity. Those are some of the things that even your future employers, I'm speaking to the graduates, or rather even the undergraduates, to say your employers are looking at how you conduct yourself. Your integrity is one of those things that basically become your door openers in wherever you go. I mean, in a set of 5 graduates, how do you set yourself apart to say, I get to work hard and smart? And as a prospective employer, they can actually see that this one here is a unique delegate, or rather unique graduate, and we are eager to keep her longer. You know, the power of mentorship and coaching, I've already mentioned that on this journey, It's those that have gone beyond you that can actually lift you up to a position where you want to be. Continuous learning and development. As of today, I'm continuously learning, continuously. It doesn't matter where you are. I think one of the things I had to learn was that when you show up in a place or when you're given an opportunity, it doesn't necessarily mean you are fully qualified or you have all the qualifications to sit on that role, but it is up to you to make sure that you basically equip yourself with the necessary lessons that you need to learn. For example, when I started sitting on the board, I needed to enroll and make sure that I learned the critical principles. And I was very glad to make sure that I committed. And at the end of the process, I was accredited as a professional board of director. You know, those are some of the things that nobody and some people will not tell you to say, go and equip yourself for this new role that you're at. But it is for you to know that I've been given a new role and I need to make sure that I quickly equip myself to stay relevant. You know, networking, I'm not going to emphasize the power of that. We know that it is through networking where you get opportunities. And that goes further to say, you need to continuously groom your leadership skills. There are people who believe that, oh, they're only born leaders. I believe that, yes, there are those people that are born leaders. But however, as an engineer, as a person who's showing up to work every day, you are the leader of your specific discipline. You are a leader of your specific day-to-day work that you're doing. And you need to make sure you continuously groom yourself to be an expert in that field that you are doing. Lastly, I want to speak a bit about personal branding. Maybe it's because the issue of social media has really fully fascinated me and I've seen the impact on that. So with personal branding, right, it's basically a process of managing and optimizing the way you show up, or rather the way you present yourself. And I must say that we're learning this a lot on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is that one space where a lot of people will tell you that I got recruiters on my inbox, I got headhunted. And it's basically how you show up on LinkedIn, you know, how you present yourself. Due to time, I will not speak much about how you show up on social media spaces, but you can see that you need to make sure that your CV is updated there. You need to show up authentically. You need to be mindful of how you engage and interact on your social media. You need to make sure you remain relevant and relatable. You know, those are some of the things that you just need to make sure. But be careful that you do not destroy your career through social media. We are aware for a lot of celebrities that lost contracts, lost a lot of things just by being, or rather by saying one wrong statement on social media. So I just needed to speak a bit about that. But all in all, I think the power of showing up and serving fully is basically what will lead us to where we want to be and continuously help us to get our careers to where we would like to see them. And let's show up fully and make sure that we give the world what God has created us to give it. You know, so thank you so much. I'll give back to the speaker. Over to you, sorry.
Wow, thank you so much, Confidence, for that. And thank you mostly for showing up for us today. I think we've all learned a lot, and there's a question for you already. Carvelo, would you like to go ahead?
No, I just want to say thank you to Confidence for sharing that, especially about personal branding. I think it's important us as young engineers to invest in our personal brands. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's something that we definitely don't think about, but it's so important, creating that personal brand. And I like how you said that the impact is important and our work doesn't end on the paper. And as young engineers, I think we can all aspire like you and have that broader impact on society. I think that was really appreciated. Also, I like what you said about mentorship, you know, there's people that have walked the journey before you, and it's so important to go out there and gain mentorship. And sometimes mentorship is not going to come and knock on your door. You have to be the one to go and knock on someone's door. So to those young people on the call today, if there's someone that you aspire to, go and knock on their door, and chances are they're going to give you that time of day. Chances are they want to educate someone in any case. So I think that's something also we can learn from confidence. And I think if I have one question from you, how do you do it all? When I started this call, I think I said we all have 24 hours in the day, but maybe you have a bit more, engineering, managing the company, the app, and all of the boards you sit on, all of the platforms that you serve. Maybe if you can just share with us, how do you do it all in the 24 hours that you have?
Okay, just to disclose, I'm actually no longer serving on those. The other one, I think the contracts ended and did not want to renew them. But at the time when I was sitting on the boards, it was the same time when I was working on Prestio, full-time working, and studying and learning on the other side, and also making sure I live my life. I don't compromise on that. And one of the things I can also disclose is that I don't work on weekends. You'd be surprised that actually, yeah, I don't do work on weekends as such. The only time I think I'll do work is probably on a Sunday evening when I know there's something critical to do or to prepare for the week, or rather if I'm studying, because you will not be able to cover everything during the week. But what I've learned is, I think, the importance of time management. I did a very short course in my first year of working when I didn't have a lot of work to do. It's called time management. And in time management, I learned the key things, which was about the important versus urgent. So what that does is that it helps you categorize on your day-to-day. When you list your to-do list, you first attend to what's important and urgent. And then after, you start looking at what's urgent and not that important. And if it's urgent and not that important, you can actually delegate. The Johari window of time management said that you can actually, if something is important but not urgent, if it's something is urgent but not important, just learn to delegate it. If something is urgent and important, you do it. And if something is not urgent but important, you basically need to schedule it. Something is not urgent and not important, chances are that you shouldn't even be looking at it. So that is the 4 Johari, or rather the 4 components of the Johari window of time management. But enough with the theories. I think in reality is the fact that learn to take a day at a time and learn to accept what you can do. I think making sure that you make the most of your days, one of those things. Some of these boards you basically get to sit in the meetings in the evening, and also disclosing them at work that I need to have a UJ meeting at 3 o'clock, for example. It was one of those things where my managers already knew that I'll need to be excused from lunchtime, for example, but I'll still make sure that I meet my deadlines. One of the things I needed to do when I was early days of my career is to put extra hours in my workday hours, and that was for mostly learning and development. And I learned to put extra hours when I know that I've spent some of my time, let's say, serving on a certain day, giving back in the community work. What I'll do is that I'll stay up extra 2-3 hours at work in the evening, just to make sure that I still deliver the best of my day-to-day work as an engineer. So there's no harm in working hard. That's why I still put it up there on the screen to say, you can still work smart, but there's no harm in working hard. But make sure you give yourself a break. Make sure that you still keep the balance. Sure you exercise. Make sure that you still show up and be there for your family, for your relationships, for your fun, and all that social part of your life. Make sure that you're still fully present. Because at the end of the day, if you don't show up for your day-to-day life, one of the days you burn out. And that's when you realize that I should have taken into consideration the power of that balance in my life. So I'd say that's my bits and pieces to answer that.
Thanks. I think that was a great response. I think it speaks a lot to what Johan was mentioning when it comes to work-life integration, and you seem to have gotten that integration well there. There's also another question for you. I think we'd hold it until the end. Moving on now to our next speaker. Please, if you have any more questions, put it in the chat and we will get back to it as soon as we are done with our next speaker. And the next speaker is quite an exciting one. It's Dr. Gift Mpefu, PRN, Managing Director at MTech Engineers. And he, like myself, is an electrical engineer by profession, and he's the founder and managing director of MedTech Engineers. So he has found the place where engineering and medical sciences meet, and he has been involved in the telecommunications, power systems, and engineering and electronic space, and healthcare technology management for over a decade. He previously worked at Vodacom Ericsson Sub-Saharan Africa, where he was responsible for professional engineering services. He holds a BSc in electrical engineering, as I mentioned. He has his master's, and even now his PhD in engineering management. Dr. Gift serves on the Ministerial Advisory Committee on e-health, and he is a registered professional engineer as well with the Engineering Council of South Africa. He is a member of the Clinical Engineering Association of South Africa, the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers, as well as the International Council on Systems Engineering. Quite a great profile there, Dr. Gift. Over to you. You can share with us today on engineering careers. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Sayuri. Yeah, so I think it's sometimes I think it's easy to say, to summarize everything by saying I'm just an engineering activist. That's how Godfrey usually refers to me, and I think I agree with him. So thank you so much for the opportunity. It's very exciting to be talking to the smart people. It's always nice to talk to engineers, and especially the young engineers, because they have lots of energy, they have lots of talent, they have lots of ideas, and those are the people that we need to invest time in, and we also need to listen to them and get some advice from them. And you know, they must also get advice, you know, from those who were there before them. So I must start saying that some of the engineers that I know are top CEOs, you know, in a number of companies operating across a number of different sectors, not just in engineering. And these are engineers. And you must really appreciate the engineering education, because that's really the reason why we have engineers operating in a number of different disciplines. You also find a lot of engineers within management layers, right through to the top leadership positions in business as well as in government. However, having an engineering qualification is not a default enabler for one to assume a leadership role or attain success that you wish for yourself. But it is only the beginning. So what am I saying? I'm saying the engineering qualification is a fundamental foundation that we all need for us to see the best in ourselves. The engineering qualification on its own will not take us to where we want to be. And I think that is very important. A little bit about my experience. And I think it's very important because today we are celebrating 67, Mandela 67. And I remember 1994, that's when Nelson Mandela became the president of this country. During that year, I was doing my first year at the university somewhere in UK, in KZN. It was not UKZN at the time, but it was in KZN at the time. And, you know, being a first year student was very, very difficult for me at the time, you know, and we had to work very, very hard to make sure that we do well in our studies, despite all the challenges that we had. Fast forward, I found myself having completed my degree and joining the industry in the early 2000s. And that was a very, very interesting experience, because my expectations were not necessarily met, because while I was at varsity, I had my own understanding or expectations of what one will be exposed to, once you complete your studies. But when I was offered to the office and offered the job, I got into this office where I was expected to do a lot of administrative work, at least for a start. And I became very, very depressed for a few months. But later on, I got to accept the situation. And later on, luckily, as an engineer, one gets to be excited when you are really afforded the opportunity to work on real engineering work. And of course, I did not make the connection between the admin work that I was doing with the real engineering work that I was to do a few months later. And a few months later on, I also realized the connection between that if one did not have a good appreciation of the administration platform that you need to have in place for the engineering work to take place, you probably will not, make it, or you'll really struggle to really deliver the products or services that you are actually charged with. So that was my first experience. And I went on, to operate within the technical environment. And I realized that I, had reached, my limit in terms of what I wanted to understand within the technical environment. I moved into a marketing environment. Actually, it was a product management and marketing environment. But of course, marketing what? We were marketing technical products. And this was very interesting because when I went for the interview for that particular role within the same organization I was working for, my boss at the time, or would-be boss at the time, he said something very, very profound to me. And he was also an engineer, by the way. He said to me that, it's actually easy for him to recruit an engineer to work in a marketing role than to recruit a marketing person to do or to perform an engineering function. So that was very, very powerful for me because it means that as an engineer, you are flexible to operate in any environment, be it technical, be it marketing, finance. It's very easy for you to adjust and work in that environment. So that was also a very, very important lesson for me. A few years later, I moved, obviously changed jobs and changed companies to join one of the technology vendors. And of course, that job required the experience that I had gained in the marketing environment. But not only that, it also required someone with the technical experience that I had gained prior to that. So meaning every step I took in my career was really coming together for my own, advantage. And long story short, I was there for a few years, and later on, obviously, I quit the organization to start my own business. And in the process of starting my own business, I was invited by the very same multinational company to come and become a shareholder in the organization, and not only the shareholder, but also to sit on the board of that organization. And that was purely because of the different experiences, the different work environments that I exposed myself to. That was really the key for me to see that particular realization in my career. So I'm saying this because and relating this story with you because the world out there requires people who are experienced not only in one competence area, but rather in a number of disciplines. So it is important that you fully understand your work, and not only your work, you also understand your current work environment. So you need to understand how your department, your unit, your section, how is your unit or department related to the marketing department? How is your engineering unit, related to the finance department of your organization? How is it related to the legal, stakeholder relations, or even regulatory environment of your organization? You need to understand that. Doing this will improve your skills in business that could really elevate your career to greater heights, as I've indicated before. So, but I must indicate that it is also important to remember that some people prefer to remain in hardcore technical disciplines, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. After all, we are all trained as engineers. That is our default, space. The world needs that too, and you also have the opportunity to become a specialist or a go-to person in your field of expertise. So you need to decide, as a young engineer, what you want to achieve with your career. You must learn from others. Very important to learn from others. You must learn from your peers. You must understand and learn from your industry. You must also learn from your professional societies. So by professional societies, I'm referring to societies such as the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers, for those who are into electrical engineering. And I know there is South African Institute of Civil Engineers or even mechanical engineers. So you need to be involved because there is a role for you to play in those societies. And not just a role for you to play, but there is so much for you to learn from by participating in those forums. But remember that you are also a unique individual, and don't expect your career to unfold the same way as it does for other people. Why? Because you are unique. You have a unique contribution to make to the society or to the universe. We often make mistakes of comparing ourselves with our peers, and then that's where we get things wrong. So we really appreciate the talents and the experience that we have, and your personality, because that is what will actually shape the end goal in terms of your career. So that way you'll be able to find yourself over a period of time. It doesn't take a year, 2 years, or even 3 years to find yourself. It takes time because you are shaped by your experiences, you are shaped by your exposure, you are shaped by a number of things. So that cannot happen during the first 2 or 3 years of your working experience. So be patient with yourself. So if I were to give you some tips, given the time that we have for this afternoon, I would say, and of course, I'm repeating what some of the speakers have mentioned, in that you need to find yourself a mentor. You need to embark on continuous education, participate in professional societies, as I've indicated, and of course, be flexible to be exposed to other non-technical roles, such as business development, sales, marketing. Be exposed to those roles. There's nothing wrong. You can always come back to the technical side at a later stage. But then you become a good resource that is then able to sell those technical solutions that we build from time to time, in a smart way, in a way that makes it easier for your potential customers to buy into your solutions. You need to establish and grow your business as well as your personal network. And most importantly, be or remain professional. So in conclusion, our country is facing many challenges, as you know. We've seen what's happening with our infrastructure, particularly the energy infrastructure, the water infrastructure. From time to time, there is disruption with our supply of energy. There's disruption with the supply of, water. And these problems, as you can see, at the heart of these problems you find engineers, because engineers are really sitting at the core of the solution that will actually get us out of this trouble. Of course, you need engineers, but engineers are not the only resources that you require to solve the problems or complex problems that we are facing. You need to be flexible enough to collaborate and work with people from other disciplines. So I wish you the best of luck with your career and hope to interact with some of you in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gift. I think that was the most perfect way to round up this talk that we've been having today, and really giving us the power to understand the utility of electrical engineers or engineers in general. And I think what you mentioned there about, no task that you do is menial. And that is so important, because even if you're doing some administration in your engineering company, all of that ties into the bigger picture. And as engineers, if we want to solve problems for humanity, we do need to understand the full value chain of engineering and not just the technical work. And it brings me back to this parable that I once heard. If you go to a financial accounting firm, just say you go to Old Mutual, and they give you advice, and they tell you that, this advice for how to invest your money, it's coming from a structural engineer. You might still be confident enough to take that. Whereas if you were going to cross a bridge that was designed by an accountant, you may not be so confident in that. So yes, engineers really, I think the problem solving ability is there, and we can apply ourselves to solve those problems that you mentioned that are facing humanity if we do become full rounded. And of course, there is a place for specialization, but not everyone can be a specialist. And I like that you said we all have a unique contribution. We can't try to emulate everything that we've seen. If we want to reach our full potential, we have to understand what our unique contribution is. And I think that also ties back to the other speakers, where, first you need to understand yourself and work on that. Thank you so much. I think that was the most perfect way to round up. I just want to take 2 questions for the panel. I think the first is for confidence, and then the next any of you can answer. So it's by Lusunzi, and she says, "Hi, Confidence. I'm a new and fresh graduate. She's currently employed as a candidate, and she's struggling to find out what her exact path is to improve and grow her career. And if you can just sum up for her, what would be your highlights for especially a young female engineer in the industry?" Confidence, if you don't mind taking that one.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Miketa, for the question. I think I appreciate the fact that she's reaching out, which is part of the reason why we call it a mentorship session. And the first thing I can advise, which is what I've indicated, it's the importance of improving oneself in that given role. So let's say, for example, you are currently a technician in a water division. It is very important that your self-development be aligned with where you are, meaning that doing a BTech in that field of sphere basically you wouldn't hurt. However, if you are still not sure of whether that is the right path, if you are in a company which has different divisions, you can raise that to your manager or your HR person to say, "I'm interested in learning transport. I'm also interested in learning structures," and not necessarily limit yourself to that. So the first step is to really make sure that you develop yourself where you are. The second thing is to reach out to ensuring that you still get experience in other disciplines, so that you find that niche in the industry that you think would be very important. And more than anything, I think still make sure you do have a mentor. Everybody who has spoken today has mentioned the importance of mentorship. The mentor will be able to delve deeper onto your personality, your needs, and where you basically need to be directing your path. Because my response at this moment, it's basically very generic, but it will be quite interesting to understand, what is your exact struggle? Is it because of your day-to-day work, or is it because you struggle to see where you should be taking your next step? And that specific mentor is that person that will have that full understanding in order to give you a full guidance on that. But I think that's in summary what I can give you for now, Miketa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that has satisfied the question. Moving on, we have a question from Swesha, and then afterwards we'll take a question from Abdi Shukri. Swesha?
Thank you very much, Sai. And thank you to
Hi,
CESA
Swesha.
for hosting such an incredible event. My question is for Dr. Gift. Good afternoon, Dr. Gift. Thank you for sharing your story with us. There's something that really stood out for me. It was the position where you transitioned from being an employee to an employer. What kind of discernment did you, or rather, how would you describe that process that you went through to make that transition? And secondly, what type of support did you need for it to be as successful as it is today? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Swesha, and thanks for the question. So the transition was, I must indicate that it was a process that did not last for a period no less than 3 years or 4 years from when the business was conceptualized. The mindset of moving from a secured environment, in a form of a formal employment to move into an unknown territory it's not an easy one. It's very scary and it's very normal, I must indicate. So at some point in the transition process, I quit obviously corporate to focus on business. But after about 12 months or so, because I had a few contracts here and there, I was still very, very scared. So I found myself back in corporate. And, and I did not last in corporate for, after I rejoined, I did not even last for, 2.5 years. I went back to business. So that shows you that, that was just a normal response to my system as to the shock that I'd exposed it to. So it was not an easy one. In terms of support system, I think the most important thing was to ensure that I understand exactly the nature of business that I wanted to be involved in. And of course, I did not have all the answers. So I partnered with or collaborated with a number of people, including those who are in the same space as I do. So there is this concept called competition, but I like to call it not competition, but co-petition. So where we collaborate and compete at the same time. And that's how we operate in most cases. So that I have found that to be a very, very useful strategy, but as well as understand my weaknesses, that I'm an engineer, I'm not a legal person. I'm an engineer, I'm not an auditor. So when managing business, it's very important to understand those things so that you remain compliant all the time, because if you don't utilize the professionalism that is expected by those particular experts, you may find yourself out of business. And besides, as a professional engineer, you are expected to perform work that is within your competency area. And that does not only hold for engineering work, it also holds for other, disciplines as well. So the realization of understanding your competencies is very important, because then that will tell you what sort of support you need from other people.
Thank you, Gift. It does not sound like an easy journey, but clearly it was your journey and it was something that you had to do. Johan, I'm not sure if you want to add to that, because I know you had a similar transition from, let's call it corporate to self-ownership.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Sayuri, and thank you, Dr. Gifja. I think it's important, for different, in terms of your career, where you are, to realize, again, what is the end state, or what is at least your year, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year sort of. And remember, if you have a way of doing it, or a sort of an indication where you want to go, you can change it tomorrow if you want to. I mean, nobody says that you have to go and spend your holidays in Cape Town. If something happens, you want to go to Durban, you just change direction. I think it's important for everybody to realize, when you are still young, you've got lots of things you want to do and want to achieve. And as you grow older, some of the things you will not do anymore because you realize you don't really need it. But it is important to have a plan at least, and make sure that you follow your plan and get, like Dr. Gift has said, get information from everybody. Don't be afraid to ask and better yourself every day in terms of your knowledge.
Thanks. I think it reminds me of a quote by Nelson Mandela, which is that you never lose, and if you lose, you still win because you learned the lesson along the way. Okay, Abdi Shukri, I think you had your hand up. Would you like to ask a question? I think you just have to unmute yourself. Okay, I think while we're waiting, there's a question on the chat. As a young engineer who has been in the industry for over a year, how do you get your technical lead to trust you with more responsibilities? So it's a question around trust. Panelist, I'm not sure which one of you would like to take that one.
I think I'll give it a go as a first stab in terms of how I see things. Again, it comes down to what I said earlier, and Sayuri, you also reiterated, keep on keeping on. Keep on doing the right thing. And what I would also suggest is that you overperform. You show your lead that, look, he can trust you, and trust gets built over time. Okay, and then whenever he wants something tomorrow 4 o'clock, you give him to him tomorrow morning at 8. For instance, if that's your focus and your whole mindset is in terms of exceeding his expectations, and that goes for life, that goes for everybody that you deal with. If your focus is to exceed expectations, they will trust you and entrust you with more responsibility.
Yeah.
And just to
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, no, I just wanted to add one thing onto that to say engineering problems are not predictable. Sometimes, like you're saying, you may promise that by 4 o'clock you'll be done tomorrow. And somewhere along the journey, realize this is not actually a straightforward answer. It actually need more. One thing I learned as early as possible was the fact that it's important to reach out to your senior. Do not struggle in silence. They appreciate it when you continuously giving them feedback instead of showing up tomorrow at 4 o'clock and said, actually, I couldn't do it. So make sure that you learn to build your strength network, build the confidence to ask a senior a question, and don't sit in silence, because the problem that comes with losing trust, it's only when you fail to pitch with a solution, whereas all this time around you're just quiet, assuming you're working hard. So make sure you reach out to them. They really, or rather to reach out to your senior, they really appreciate it when you graduate engineers show up with questions during the process of doing the work. Then they know they can trust that you are working towards a solution that they'll be able to deliver to a client.
Absolutely confident. And I also agree with Johan, but I also want to indicate that it's important, if you want to win my trust, first of all, I want to see that you understand the problem. You have to make sure that you are thorough in terms of understanding the problem and making sure that your interpretation of the problem and my interpretation of the problem are basically on the same wavelength, because otherwise you will be going away to solve a problem that I did not ask you to solve. So that is number one for me. The second thing is make sure that you demonstrate enthusiasm to solving the problem. Show the energy, show that you want to solve the problem. And how do you show that? You show that by, starting to, brainstorm about the methodology, not necessarily the nitty-gritties, but to say, given this problem and after understanding this problem, I think if I were to do 1, 2, 3, 4, it will help me to get to the end goal, because that's what supervisors or managers expect of you, because they are running a business. They don't have time to wait for you for the next 24 hours only to find that you are completely lost. So by giving them assurance that you are on the right track, you are off the same wavelength, that will give them the right, that will earn you the right trust. And that will also give you more motivation to perform even better.
Maybe I can, Sayuri, if you've got another minute or so just to come in here. That comes back to what I've mentioned earlier in terms of your map of the world. You must remember that your map and what you have and your leaders or your leader or the guy that you need to report to has a total different map in terms of maybe he has or she has 20, 30 years experience already. So what I normally do is I ask my juniors to do something, but I give them very little information, to see how they respond, because if they don't know, they must come and ask. So the chances that we've got the same picture in our minds, if I explain to you something with verbally, is close to 0%. We always say, no, we need at least we're on the same page. I can tell you sometimes we're not even in the same book and we think we're on the same page. Then if you don't ask questions and understand really what you want, and that by asking questions, and remember, while you're still young, you're allowed to ask questions, and don't think it's a stupid question because in 5 years' time, you're going to answer that question that you just asked. So it's important for you to really drill down onto the nitty-gritty and really understand what's expected of you. And that will show your commitment, and it will obviously assist you in growing your career.
And just one last thing, Johan, that is very important, extracting mental models.
Correct.
Please, let's remember to use the tools that we have as engineers. We like to draw. Let's use the visual aids to make sure that, and it's easier for us to extract our mental models by drawing a picture on the board. And that way, we can gauge to see whether we're on the same page or not, that is very important. Use those tools, to obviously to help you solve some of the complex problems in your working environment. Yeah.
Can I just mention one more point, which is very important? It's also raising up your hand. Raise your hand. There are times when they'll be discussing a project and busy assigning members while you're sitting silently there. So it's very important to raise your hand and say, I'm interested in that project, because it is not always the time where your manager will think you are ready for such a project. And it is up to you to say, I want to work on that project. In simple words, opportunity don't come to those who are sleeping. You need to sometime wake up and chase them where you think they are critical. And the same applies with your experience that you need for your registration. If you know you've got design experience and you need to gain experience elsewhere, raise your hands and say, I've met these outcomes and I think I still need these outcomes to register. Just raise your hand and speak nicely to your managers and your senior. And that's where they'll going to build trust in, because they know that you are always raising up your hands and showing up to seeking opportunities of growth.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. I think that was a very, very informative discussion. And thank you, Pablo, for the question, because I think we all have learned from it. If I can just summarize, I think that our panelists have said that the basis of trust is communication and honoring commitments. But because we all have a different map of the world, communication cannot always be easy. So use visual tools, raise your hand if no one's seeing you, and show up as confidence is to the work that's at hand. Ask questions until you know exactly what's needed, and then do your best to perform on that. I think we have one more question. Linda? Would you like to ask a question?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody from the panel. I'm sorry for the network issue on my side, was a struggle. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be offside or whatever, but I wanted to ask if I have more than 10 years experience in the industry, both construction and consulting, and I've recently registered my own company, so I wanted to join the consulting, not the construction, because it's a bit of a jungle there. So I wanted to ask if is there any way where CESA is assisting people like me for like now I'm not employed, so I've been trying to look for jobs, but it's a struggle. Oh well, because maybe I'm in the small town. I don't know. So I wanted to check if CESA is there anywhere where they assist people in that regard. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. I think Gift was the previous chair of the CESA Gauteng committee, so I would let him take this.
Yeah, so luckily I'm here, and that's not necessarily for, well, that's not the mandate of CESA to help individuals, to set up their companies. Certainly they don't do that. However, CESA membership is comprises of companies, not individuals. And we are here to assist. And I think I hear what you're saying. And you are more than welcome to be in touch with myself. Or you can also contact the chairperson of the branch in the area where you reside, so that they can help you to set it up. But I'm actually much more happy to to grab you by the hand and walk the journey with you. I understand exactly where you come from.
Thank you, Gift. I think in the absence of any other questions, unless anyone wants to come through right now, we can just have the closing remarks. So I've captured the essence of what each speaker has said. Please tell me if I'm quoting you wrong, but from Johan's talk, we've learned to keep on keeping on. And I think in my early years, I used to hear Johan say that a lot, and it didn't really, I didn't know what it meant. But I think after today's talk, we understand that you need to keep doing your best, keep showing up. Work-life integration, not balance, is necessary. And then if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. So we can change our perception of the world. We can change our perception of what we think we can achieve. And as Johan says, if you believe you can do it, you're right. And if you believe you can't do it, you're also right. So on the basis of that, I think what I took away the most from his was that we can reprogram our thinking. And I think that is so powerful to know that we can reprogram our thinking. I think it's a bit too late for me as an electrical engineer to learn how to code and program software. But if I can reprogram my mind, I think that's quite powerful. So that's some key takeaways from Johan today. And he has left details on the chat if you want to contact him for some personal mentorship and coaching. And then from confidence, I think there was a lot to learn there, but just to summarize it, she says, as an engineer, your work does not end on paper. So think about the broader impact that you have on the communities in which you work. Show up and grow your network. I think she gave an example of how she volunteered at the university and then got a role there on the committee. And yeah, she also did just now mention, pick your hand up and volunteer for work, volunteer to help or assist with tasks at work. So if you want opportunities, you have to go out and grab them. I guess they're not going to come to you. She says to work hard and to work smart. There's nothing wrong with working hard, and equip yourself for the role that you're in and also the role that you want to be in. And then Dr. Mpefu, our last speaker, I think he really showed us the power that we have as engineers and the flexibility in our careers. He says, as an engineer, you are flexible to work in any environment. You have that problem-solving ability and skill, and engineers are needed. If you generalize and learn about the broader environment, you can really solve some of the bigger societal issues out there. And I think his career is a testament to that. An electrical engineer now solving problems in the medical space. And I think that really gives us the power to believe that as an engineer, there's lots of work out there for us. There's lots of opportunity out there for us. The world requires people that are diverse and experienced in various disciplines. And then he also said to understand your work and your working environment. So don't just focus too much on the technical, but understand how you fit into the broader company and society in general. And then just in closing notes, I would like to thank our speakers, the three of you today. I think you've given back a little bit more than 67 minutes. You can dedicate some to next year. But I think all of us on the call, especially myself, we have learned a lot. And it was really something that I can take away from this and apply every day, starting tomorrow morning when I don't snooze my alarm and, reframe my thinking on what I can achieve. And yeah, I think we really appreciate you from a CESA perspective. In terms of the our annual sponsors for CESA, they are shown on the screen. And without the support of our annual sponsors, these events will not be possible. To the young professionals on the call, please join the CESA Young Professional Forum. You can find it on the CESA website. I'm sure Sarah's going to share the link on the group as well. And I think if I can just speak to my own journey with CESA, I've learned a lot from this platform, and it has given me the opportunity to get mentors and to speak to people in the industry and to grow and build a network. So now when I have a task at work that I'm not so sure of, I have a big group of electrical engineers that I can speak to. And I think that's really the purpose of events like this, to grow in your personal capacity and to build your network. So yes, thank you to everyone that have attended. I hope you have a great day going forward. And thank you to our three speakers. We really appreciated you today, and we've really learned a lot. The presentation will be available on CESA TV if you would like to watch it again or to share it with your friends and colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
We're
Thank
ending
you.
this meeting 67 minutes plus bonus. Thank you.
plus. Thank you, Godfrey.
Thank you, everyone.